G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome back to another video, and here we go with the latest Manufacturers Series combination for the current season going on. And before we get started, look at this split. This is second split. So obviously starting a brand new account for my daily races has done me some good. I'm now able to get into second split because my DR isn't getting constantly tanked by daily races. But today's combination, we're at Blue Moon Bay Speedway Infield A in Group 3.
Yeah, boy!
Anyway, with that being said, we're going to go out for qualifying. So of course, the Toyota Supra, as always, Group 3 manufacturers. My chosen car was the Toyota, so we exit the pits, rather. We're not entering the pits, are we? We exit the pits and coming around for our qualifying. Now, this qualifying is actually a bit of a slipstream festival, but unfortunately I wasn't quite able to get close enough for a slipstream off the back of Dimension 0 up ahead, but we're going to see if we can do our best to just getting a clean lap in. And the lap was actually okay up until this point where I grazed the barrier on the exit, and it was really no good. The lap was over at that point. There is, however, enough time to cancel back to the pits and have another run. You can also continue your run from previous because the tyre wear is so low, but I did exit the pits in hopes to get some form of slipstream. That's exactly what I'm going to try and do, because we've got this Mazda RX Vision that was just behind me, and I tactically slowed down at the slowest part of the circuit to try and get right behind him, because what I'm actually going to do is maybe something that's a little bit cheeky and maybe something that a lot of people may not like, but what I'm actually going to do is slingshot past this guy and overtake him into my qualifying lap. So we're a good distance behind. That's probably about a half a second gap, load of lag, maybe a little bit closer than half a second, but we're gaining in the slipstream and coming up towards the first turn. This is the start of our lap. Looking on the right hand side, we're braking just on the arrow boards that come after the 100 meter board, and we've overtaken him into that braking zone there, and we are now ahead. So we've got the gains from the slipstream down the straight. We're not going to get held up in the corners. For this corner here, just brake and turn in, down one gear on the black ad after the 100 meter board, and then turning in, braking. Similar technique halfway between the two lampposts on the left. And then we've got this little bit of a straight with this shallow turn halfway through, and then coming to the first hairpin, we're braking just as the sort of hard sharp shadow of the bridge ends, and then nice and gentle second gear, looking on the right hand side into the second hairpin, braking just before the orange mark on the barrier on the right hand side, and then downshift to first very late to get some extra rotation for that tighter second part of the hairpin. Final turn is just a lift off before the 50 meter board, nice and close to the inside wall and nice and close to the wall on the exit, and then we come down to get this shortest run possible using all the banking to my advantage, and I've now in turn giving the slipstream back to the RX Vision behind, so I guess you could say it's all even at this point. We come across the line with the 106.72, and it puts us 9th in this lobby here. The fact that we were ranked 18th probably goes to show that that's a decent qualifying lap from me. This is also second split, which I'm normally in third split, so all these guys are a bit faster than me normally. But as always with the Manufacturers Series, let's just enjoy the Manufacturers Series introduction. Lovely, as always we meet ourselves on the grid, once again not meeting us on the grid immediately, meeting the first 8 cars, because we are qualified in 9th of course. We're going to start this race off and just get through the phase of the cold tyres, but the strategy for this race actually is a little bit different to what we normally see. No tyre requirements, no pit stops, basically no tyre wear either, and it's a very long race, 28 laps, it's over 30 minutes, the race, so decent distance to go with no pit strategy, but it's definitely a refreshing change, I would say. We're normally fighting the tyre wear. You know, if you've got a car that's a little bit more aggressive on tyres, you're going to be very, very off the pace by the end of the race normally. But with 1 times tyre wear, which is the multiplier for this combination today, the tyre wear is not really an issue. You got maybe 10% tyre wear, if that, by the end of the race. So there's definitely... it's definitely nice to not have to worry about tyres. You can put your brake balance to whatever you like. You don't have to worry about how it might affect the tyre wear because the tyre wear is so low. It's really good. It was definitely a refreshing change. And then fuel was ×2, so it came off slightly faster than the tyre wear kicked in, but still not enough to be an issue. We just about used most of the tank by the end of the race. But because this race has no strategy in it, it's very, very important to keep in touch with the leading pack for the entire race. You don't have any pit strategies to play out, so you can't quite, you know, undercut people and overtake that way. You have to be tactical. You have to work together, and because the race is so long, it's really important to work together at the start of it, so you don't lose time. So we're trying to work together with this Lamborghini. We bumped him a couple of times, with the last bump halfway through turn 1 just unsettled him, so I have to be a little bit more careful with my bump drafting now, because I know that Lamborghini can get unstable if I bump draft him while he's sort of loaded up in a corner. So we do have to be very careful about that. But I think he knows at this point that I do want to work together, and I can see that the pack up ahead is actually getting a little bit feisty as we've now got up to the back of Atom, which we're finally who we're finally racing again, although not directly wheel to wheel, but we are in the same race as him, which is nice. He's normally in second split and I'm normally in third, so it's cool to be in the same lobby again. But it just means we are now more directly locked in a battle for Toyota, but we'll see how that plays out as the season goes on. V12 Zonda made a mistake at the second of the hairpins, and I overtake him because he ran wide, so it's now roles reversed, and we are in the slipstream of Atom, so we do have to be very careful in the braking now, and there's a little bit of an incident at turn 1. I think the Honda went up the inside of the other Supra, and he comes back on my racing line, and I've got nowhere to go. He was right where the trajectory of my car wanted to go, and then V12 Zonda tries to go around the outside because I was compromised, but he ends up going on the brakes too late and understeering into the wall, so that is no good there, and I've now got the close attention of Dimension Zero behind. So unfortunately, that incident at turn 1 and being slowed up by the Honda that came back onto the circuit right in front of me, it's now put me off the back of the pack up ahead, which is no good. I was trying to desperately look for a way past the Honda when that incident did occur, but it wasn't quite going to come off. So now I've got to work together with Dimension Zero to try and catch up to the back of Atom. We've got about 1.2 seconds to catch up to him before we can get into the slipstream range, so we do have to sort of be tactical with how we do this. If we begin to fight too much, we are going to lose that pack really, really quickly. We skip ahead to the end of lap 4. Dimension Zero has had enough. The gap to Atom hasn't really changed, still about 1.9 seconds. But Dimension Zero probably felt at this point that he was getting held up by me, and that, I guess, is fair enough. My lap time there is only 107.3 for lap 4. You can definitely lap a little bit quicker if you're a bit more comfortable. I didn't feel like I was that comfortable. I felt as though I could be pretty quick, but the Supra was very, very big handful through these hairpins. So much oversteer and instabilities. But we're going to fast forward down the straight as we're going to catch up to the back of Dimension Zero. He thinks about going defensive, but I'm going to hang behind for this one. I don't want to get locked in a battle. That's the main thing that I've got in the forefront of my mind. For the first half of the race, there is really no point in fighting for your position. You've just got to let the overtakes happen and work together where appropriate. And that's exactly what we did, because we skip ahead to lap 10, or the end of lap 10. You can see Atom has fallen off the back of the pack ahead, or the pack that he was in. In fact, I think that pack has actually split up. The pack has imploded because everyone's spread out. But I'm still working together with Dimension, and I decided to go for the move this time because I was worried about Mansell Drift, who was behind me at the time, about 1/10 behind. I was worried that if I bump drafted Dimension, Mansell Drift would potentially go for the move there, although there's a little bit of contact on the apex as Mansell Drift tries to follow me through, going up the inside of Dimension Zero, and however, we are able to keep that position and we continued to work together all the way up until the end of lap 17, so there's really not much action to show, to be honest, because it was just this. It was just a train lapping, and I was at the front of it getting bumped along by any car behind. It was mental drift for a while, and then it turned to Kyuta in the Subaru. The Subaru, not quite as good in a straight line, so I wasn't getting as frequent of bumps as I was when mental drift was behind in his Ferrari, but we continued on all the same. It's a little bit of an incident with Platinum. I think he made a mistake, and he's now fallen in behind myself and Atom, so I know at this point I've got a potential to try and get up to the back of Atom and steal that 4th position off him. But at the end of the next lap, Platinum goes to re-overtake Atom. And we're going to have a look at that time gap to myself and Atom, and it's decreased to under half a second. So they've been slowed up massively by that little bit of argy-bargy overtaking and fighting for that position there. And now we are firmly in the slipstream. It's very important at this point to not get caught out by the slipstream and just, you know, keep on the pace. The pace in this race so far has actually been very good. I'm quite happy with it. All low 7s, 107.1, 0.2, a 0.1, a 0.1, a 0.4 on lap 17, so that was probably where an overtake took place, and another 0.1, and then this lap we'll see what it is. But we've just got to focus on getting a very good exit out of the final turn, although I think it's technically the second to last turn, turn 9 here, and then the long banked exit onto the main straight is turn 10, the final corner of this track. That's how I consider it to be anyway. But we have a look behind. That Subaru is very, very close behind, but I've still got the slipstream of Atom. I knew at this point if the Subaru pulled out for a move, he would not be able to overtake me because that Subaru would run out of steam as soon as he pulled out to the side of me, because I'm still in the slipstream of Atom. But what you can see, it's all going quite well at this point until there we get a very poor bump coming through turn 1, and the Subaru takes full advantage of that. So I've now got this Subaru ahead, is going to be crap on the straights, and I'm now suffering the effects of dirty air. I'm not used to the dirty air, and I'm now making a lot of mistakes, getting the sequence in turn 2, 3, 4 incorrect, and just falling off the back of Kyuta a little bit. There's still more fighting going between Platinum and Atom, and I almost look up the inside. That was a complete accident. I didn't mean to go for that. That's the first time I'd braked into there with slipstream, and then mental drift almost sort of causes me to spin out. I just am able to correct that, and we are able to continue on. Kyuta, he's almost broken the slipstream now, so he's 7/10 ahead of me as long as we get a good exit onto the straight, which we have. We got a decent exit, and that Subaru is not so great in the straight line anyway, so I was able to stick in the slipstream. Following lap, we are still in the slipstream, however this time mental drift is very close behind me. Kyuta gets a poor run onto the straight, and we once again have the slipstream, so we'll see what mental drift decides to do. He's got 2/10 a gap to me. I've got the slipstream of Kyuta, and with that slipstream the Supra is able to sort of defend from the Ferrari very, very well. We catch right up to the back of the Subaru, and we just about run wide through turn 1, and then coming up onto the banking there's more contact with mental drift, and I'm able to correct it again, and then he looks up the inside at turn 2, and yeah, I don't know, I kind of complied with that one. I wasn't too impressed with the sort of little bits of contact that almost threw my car into a spin, because I've now been thrown out of my rhythm, and Atom and Platinum have driven off into the distance, although I think Kyuta is just about hanging in the slipstream of Atom, or maybe he's broken it at this point. It would be very, very close. But we skip ahead to the end of the race. Not really much else happened, because Kyuta and Mansell were able to work together as I sort of fell off the pace a little bit, being disrupted and being a little bit rattled by getting pushed around on those few laps, as my lap times have now dropped to 0.3s and 0.4s. I really should be still in the 0.1s as the car actually gets quicker. But coming into turn 1 on the second to last lap, Zach goes for this move, which is actually a decent move to be fair. He's re-overtaking me after causing an incident at turn 1 on lap 3, I think it was, when I overtook a couple of people back at the start of the race. He ended up coming very bad, coming off quite worse off there. And I unfortunately just make this mistake. I've lost the pace now, I've lost it, and I'm not able to stick onto the back of Zach as he completely drives off into the distance. I've now got dirty tyres because all 4 wheels went on the grass, and V12 Zonda behind me, who made the mistake trying to go around the outside of turn 2, is now caught up to the back of me. He runs deep into the second hairpin and is looking to get overtaken by Naoto behind. I was looking on the radar to see that action happening. in real time just behind me. Zach gets a very poor run out on the straight. He hit the wall on the inside of turn 9, and it's given him a very, very big speed loss. So I'm able to catch back up into the slipstream, which pretty much just stops an attempt by a Naoto to try and slipstream past me. I'm able to get into the slipstream and get back up to a speed high enough that Naoto isn't able to go for that move. So I'm able to just hold my own in 9th position, basically thanks to Zach, who happened to just hit the wall. That was very lucky for me. A little bit wide off turn 2, but we're onto the final lap now, so we are going to be looking to just try and sort of keep pretty much any position we can get at this point. Remember, we qualified in 9th, so I'd be pretty disappointed to lose further time. To lose more positions to finish lower than I qualified. I'm generally, depending on the points finish, I'm generally disappointed if I drop back in a race. We'll see if we are able to keep this position. It's going to be very important for me to get a very good run out onto the main straight for the last time in this race. I haven't got any slipstream benefits off the back of Zach. The Porsche from Naoto behind is going to have the slipstream off the back of me, so I do have to play it tactical here. I'm going to keep it to the inside, which was unexpected to Naoto, who almost wanted to go to the outside, but thankfully the Supra is just strong enough in its own right down the straight, and I was able to just keep that position from a ever-closing Porsche behind in my slipstream, and I was able to finish off in 9th. 207 points. Now, the question for me was that, I know that was second split. Was it worth going again? We'll see how we managed to go.
4M underscore smokescreen.
Danny and I were working
Said IDK whether to go again.
I'd say you should. I reckon it's worth it for you.
GTR.
It's a good show.
Said
You had a
hence
good
why
race, you had a
I'm
good
fed
car.
up with it all.
You know, you have a good chance, man. I'd say go for it. If you enjoyed the race and if you feel you can do better, which I'm pretty confident you can. I'm pretty confident you could have beaten me, given the right circumstances. So I would say go again.
Capicong
But that's up to
underscore
you, of course.
R4M underscore smokescreen.
If I lose points, it's your fault.
Said alright, if I lose points it's your fault.
Probably that. Not that 207 would have done you much good
Said
anyway.
self-pity.
That's
R4M
kind of
underscore
disgusting, to be honest.
smokescreen.
Make me lose a lot of respect for them.
Said yeah, probably would drop the round anyway points wise, so makes no difference if I go again, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's exactly what we did. We went again after some hype from my boy Atom, some positive words and some nice, kind gestures and thoughts, and we decided to channel that and go again. Now, we actually got into third split this time, and we qualified even slightly slower than what we did in the first split, still within the same 10th, but because the split is lower, the overall skill of drivers is lower, and my qualifying time compared to the rest of the field was fast enough for second on the grid. It was very much a similar story to the first qualifying session. There was really no value in showing that qualifying. It was basically the same lap. It was like 3 or 4 hundredths of a second slower, and in fact my lap in the previous race would have been good enough for pole position. Jackie's lap a little bit slower than my previous, but it's within the same 10th. I don't really feel like I lost out too much, and we are in contention for the race victory, and there are more points on offer for any position sort of up the front of the grid. I believe any position up from 8th was an improvement on the 207. I think 8th position in this race was worth 209. So we are going to be fighting up the front again. So this is generally what we're used to in manufacturers, but we do want to be dabbling into second split. It's better to be racing in a higher split for less points than it is to be racing for more points in a lower split in terms of trying to develop yourself as a driver. So that's why the question in my mind, I wasn't sure whether I was going to go again, because I knew that if I got into second split again, the points down the back of the field would be probably about the same as what I got, so I would potentially have to put in an even better performance and may not even be able to match my points result and therefore lose points on the round. So that's what I was scared of, but you know, I thought if I kept the 207, I would probably drop the round in the final standings anyway, as only, I think it's 6 of your 10 rounds count or something, so you drop your 4 worst rounds, so this would probably be a round I would have dropped. So I figured, if I go again and lose out, I was probably going to drop the 207 anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference. And, Atom told me to go again, basically, so in a roundabout way, he basically told me to go again without telling me to go again. But I took his advice, I sort of went with my gut, and decided to go again, and I'm now fighting up the front of the grid. So what we've got to do now is, I know this Porsche isn't so great in a straight line, so I thankfully have the advantage down the straight now, so as long as I can stick into his slipstream for a while, I can definitely limit the amount of time I lose. Now, while I was talking about the sort of split and point situation, the action behind is actually significant for this race. So you've got Shimon 1GZ GTE behind, very fast Toyota driver. He's a lot quicker than me in a race situation, but I think unfortunately for him, he didn't quite get his slipstream in qualifying right, because he qualified in 4th behind me, and there was the driver Shin GC currently in 4th. He qualified in 3rd behind me. Normally I'm a little bit faster than Shin. I can normally drive away from Shin, but he appears to be very well onto the pace here. But I did see Shimon down in 4th, who normally out-qualifies me, or I think he's out-qualified me on every race that we've been in together. I saw him down in 4th, and I was like, oh, you're potentially going to come through the field, aren't you? And I knew that I could be faster than Shin, so I was kind of happy to see Shim and Shin behind me, and Shin being the person behind Shim. So I thought, hopefully Shin can hold up Shim and limit how quickly I lose positions to the cars behind. I think that got very confusing with the very similar names there, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. But we're 4 laps into the race, or 3 and a bit laps into the race. We're still in the slipstream of Jackie up ahead. So we've just got to make sure we limit our errors, which we haven't done there. We actually got a very poor run through the fast right-hander out onto the middle straight. We've actually lost the slipstream momentarily. We're going to have to focus on getting a very good hairpin, good sort of handling section, because this is going to really put a full stop to the fight for the race win here. I don't really think I had a chance here, because I could see Jackie was so quick. I knew I needed to keep in the slipstream for as long as possible to sort of have a chance at staying on the back of Jackie, but unfortunately for me, I haven't been able to get a very clean lap there at all, and I have lost the slipstream. At the end of lap 5, Jackie gets a very, very bad turn 9, and he's lost however many tenths that was. It was like 3 tenths or something in the one corner. It gets him a very poor run out on the straight. Shim has caught up to the back of me, and is now in my slipstream, but because I've now gotten into the slipstream of the Porsche again, he's going to struggle to overtake me from behind. So we are now stuck in a little bit of a slipstream train, but we'll see if we can now again keep onto the back of Jackie, because this is sort of my second chance. I've been thrown a lifeline at trying to stay onto the back, but that Porsche seems to be very strong. In fact, a lot of the MR cars were very strong at this combination, because there's no tyre wear. The cars don't really drop off. The MR cars don't really drop off, because they do shred their tyres in high tyre wear situations. But because there's none of that involved in this race, they basically have their handling advantage throughout the whole race, and with the straight being a massive, basically slipstream train, they don't really lose out on the straight either. So I think was kind of what was happening with the Porsche, and I think in this particular situation here, as I'm hitting the wall there, and that doesn't really help things at all, Shim has looked at that and gone, well, I'm going to overtake you, and that's completely fair in my opinion. I would have probably done the same thing. In fact, I would have definitely done the same thing. I tend to overtake cars ahead of me that are making mistakes. I don't want to get stuck behind people that make mistakes. So Shim has had that same mentality, and he's gone past me, but it now gives me an opportunity to work with him, who is the faster driver, and try and sort of make an impression on Jackie. But the point I was making before is I think I'm not that great through the hairpins and out onto the straight. I don't think I'm good enough through that section compared to some of these other drivers around me, so that was really made for difficult racing, because I wasn't able to keep onto the back of people in the right parts of the track. I outbraked myself there, but luckily Shin sees me, or Shim sees me, turns out of it, and there's no contact made, but that's completely my bad, and I think I've now put him out of the slipstream of Jackie, so that was my bad, that one. I'm very, very sorry, and fair play to him for seeing me, actually. I think most drivers would just turn in, but he saw me last second. Obviously, not his fault at all. It's just going to show his great skill at seeing me fly down the inside, Lance Stroll at Hungary style, and we just about mend the relationship by going for the bump draft ahead. So I'm going to try and, obviously, brake properly into the hairpin, and we're just going to work together with Shim for a lot of the race, and you can see the following lap we get this braking perfectly. But we skip ahead to lap 14. Shim drove off. I stuck with him for a little bit, but he did eventually get into the slipstream of the Porsche, and that was just enough of a pace advantage to him that he was able to drive away from me. So now my attention is cast behind because we have got Shin coming back at me in the Lamborghini. MR car, so I was kind of expecting that, to be honest. Although, actually, I would say Shin is showing some very good pace in this race. I am normally a little bit quicker, as mentioned previously. Once again, not good enough through the hairpins. The Supra, I found, really struggled in the hairpins, just too much oversteer. In fact, I felt as though there was more oversteer than normal. I don't know whether there's a low grip surface simulated at this track or whatever it may be, but I definitely felt as though the car was more oversteery than usual around this track. But nevertheless, it would be the same for everyone, and unfortunately for me, I just have a very oversteery car, so whatever difference there may be, if there is indeed a difference at all, is just sort of coming at a disadvantage to me, more so than others, because I've got a very poor car in terms of traction. While we've been talking there, Shin has gotten very convincingly within the slipstream. He's about half a second behind, and he gets a very good fast right. I think I'm crap through that corner too. So basically from the fast right of turn 4 up until sort of the entry to turn 9, I'm basically not that quick at all. And it just goes to show, because he's now caught up to about 2 tenths behind as we're exiting the second hairpin, although it's actually extended to about 3.5 tenths. But nevertheless, it is still strong slipstream, and I will be very surprised if he actually does hang behind me, because if I was in Shin's position, I would probably look at this dynamic and go, well, it's quite clear that I'm catching up to the back of the guy up ahead. I would probably go for the overtake and try being ahead at the front of the train. We'll see what he does. He actually has indeed done exactly what I would have done, and he's gone for the inside, and I think that was fair enough. I think I even said at the time I would have done the exact same thing. We have now switched positions. We've got about 12 laps to go, and we are just going to basically be working together again. There's no reason to be fighting. The next position is 3.9 seconds behind, so I'm not too concerned if we have to fight a little bit. But there's no point just holding each other up for 10 laps before we actually get to the crunch time of the race, before we actually get to the point in the race where positions actually matter, which is only at the end, would you believe it? Coming out of the first hairpin, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Very poor exit out of there, the Supra just stepping sideways, and, you know, I was struggling so much. I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was about me, about this car. I just struggled in the hairpins, and you can see that's put me out of the slipstream range of Shin and out onto the main straight. That Lamborghini's decent in a straight line, probably on par with the Supra, so I wasn't able to get back in the slipstream. A couple of laps later, Shin actually makes a grave error coming through the fast right and goes 4 wheels on the grass, so that's going to be very detrimental to his race now, because he's going to have dirty tyres through these sort of very grip-dependent sections of the track here, the hairpins namely, and I'm going to catch right up to the back of him. So it's given me, I've been thrown a lifeline again. I've been given a second chance at getting a high position. So remember, Jackie made an error and I was able to catch up to him again, and now Shin has made an error and I'm able to catch it up to him again. But what was going through my head at this point is I was looking at the lap count, 18 out of 28, and I was looking at that thinking, there's no way I'm going to be able to keep him behind for 10 laps to the end of the race. But I thought I had a good chance of trying to stick in his slipstream, because I sort of also had in my mind, now that he's made a mistake, he might be more nervous about going through that fast right-hander and therefore pressure himself into more errors. So I thought, you know, maybe I do have a chance of sticking in his slipstream, and I was able to do that for a number of laps, actually. We've skipped ahead to halfway through lap 23 out of 28. We're coming into the section of the track where I appear to be terrible, and that gap has just opened up beyond the slipstream range. So I was about 6.5 tenths heading down the middle straight, and then through the hairpins, that gap has opened up to over 7.5 tenths. So I've lost a tenth and a bit coming through those hairpins, and unfortunately for me, Shin has now broken the toe. But fast forward to the closing stages of the race, I'm still out of the slipstream of Shin, but I was able to put in a very decent lap in lap 26 of a 106.89, which is pretty much right there on the pace. You can see Shin's fastest lap of 106.82, so essentially the same lap, you know, a little bit of a difference there, but with some slipstream in there, there'll be no difference between us. And I'm able to put in a very decent lap, and that's pushed me back closer towards Shin and given me a chance, given me sort of a fleeting thought in my mind is if I can actually, you know, by some miracle get a decent couple of hairpins here, which is going to be very difficult for me, and get a good exit onto the straight. If I can get the slipstream down this straight coming onto the final lap, obviously that will be the last time we head down the straight in its full length. It gives me the best opportunity at getting past him into turn 1 for the third position there, and that was the plan, but I was not able to break the habit of getting very poor runs through the hairpins, and I'm still about 9 tenths off the back of Shin. I don't really have too much of a chance now because it's very difficult to overtake. I guess the last opportunity I have is probably into that first hairpin, but that relies on me getting a very decent fast right, which I found to be very difficult. But we'll see if we can sort of put in a valiant effort at trying to do such, and we'll see how that manages to work out. So coming into the very paramount fast right-hander onto the middle straight, if we have a look at the gap to myself and Shin, it's still about 9.5 tenths. I'm really struggling to see how I can get any further positions at this point. I think the last little fleeting glimmer of hope I had is that I can see the leaders running side by side, so if one of them can bin it, or if they can crash into each other and sort of lose a load of time or crash into a barrier or get a penalty, that might be my last opportunity at getting another position up. But on the exit of the second to last corner, on the exit onto the main straight, we actually get ourselves in the slipstream range of Shin, so we're able to get a decent enough exit onto the straight, but unfortunately we don't have the full length of this straight to get any closer to the Lamborghini, and we are going to finish off in 4th position, actually setting our fastest lap of the race, a 106.88. But we come across the line in 4th. You have a look at the total time there, 31.31, and I was plus 1 second, so I did a 31.32. That was actually the fastest race time I did of the night, and I was able to bring home a decent points increase up to 247 points, which I would consider to be a very good result for me. But there we go. I guess all I can say is thanks to Atom for telling me to go again. You know, I almost didn't because I thought I'd get into second split again and lose points because I'd make mistakes or whatever, or not race quick enough to be up the front. But I thankfully got into third split with more points on offer for the front of the grid, and I was able to keep the pace. I had the pace to be well up there, and I was able to bring home a points increase. So I think that was a very decent round. I was happy with that round by the end of the night. 2 slots, which is a nice amount of time to do, and it's actually an alright race with a refreshing strategy. But that's going to round out this one today, so do hit the like button if you enjoyed, and do subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me. Do leave a comment as well. Questions, comments, and constructive criticism, as always, very much appreciated. But that's going to be the end of this one today, and that means that is it from me. So once again, I do thank you very much for watching. See you later.